My profile's getting like Morrison's, but I haven't been able. I mean, I even got a hat for tonight because well, the hat's gone. Believe me, I don't look like Morrison even in the hat. It's actually my bike helmet. I've been concerned about why Morrison's leaving. Fred's talked about it. We've all wondered. My first thought, Morrison has this kind of counterintuitive concept that the longer you're a judge, the worse judge you are. And about, I guess it was 12 years ago, we were talking, and he was absolutely convinced that after 8 years on the bench, he was not nearly as good a judge as he had been after 3 years on the bench. And it occurred to me that he figured that after 20 years on the bench, if trends continue, it was about time. But Tim, I consulted with a lot of people, and we discovered the top 10 reasons that Morrison is retiring. And we want to share them with you. I wish we had the music, but we don't. Number 10. Come on, panel, let's get it together. Proposed conversion of fifth floor roof terraces to beer gardens vetoed by joint committee. Number 9, threatened with appointment to Technology and Automation Committee. Number 8, expelled from chambers by new executive office neatness inspector. Number 7, appointment of Judge Judy as Superior Court Judicial Training Czarina, excuse me. Number 6, requisition to enlarge judge's elevator to comfortably accommodate bicycle and one large rider, turned down. 5, chief's new balanced judicial career policy resulted in 10-year assignment to civil division. Number 4, joint committee vetoed his suggestion that Monday through Friday be dress-down days at the courthouse. Number 3, opportunity to direct CLE at 300-partner firm comprised of lawyers he would never appoint to any case. Number 2, Weisberg Commission sentencing recommendations too complicated to teach to any judge. And the number 1 reason that Morrison is retiring, offered BMW's first farm area franchise in Marion, Virginia.
I rise to denounce this hopelessly sentimental and phony spirit of celebration that surrounds the terrible decision of our friend and colleague Truman Morrison to retire from the bench. I hope to catalyze a popular insurrection against Judge Morrison's impending retirement, and I will read a statement and then lead the crowd in a chant that I hope will turn the tide of history tonight. Retirement is baloney. I'm sorry, I have to start again. Truman Morrison never used the word baloney to describe something he dislikes. We're off the record here, aren't we? Retirement is bullshit. You lazy son of a bitch. Who told you to hang up your robe to try and strike it rich? Retirement is bourgeois. It's old-fashioned, too. Judge Nielsen never retired. Why should you? He was on the court for over 50 years. Now, that was plenty. He's laughing now at your piddling 20. If he were here tonight, Justice Marshall would kick your ass because you're starting the next rotation by abandoning the criminal class. Judge Robert M. Scott would curse you out for being a sorry, no-account, bourbon guzzling, left-wing pinko, motorcycle riding, layabout. Justice Douglas would never be a retiree, touring the falls of Niagara. He'd be at the drugstore right now, buying his Viagra. Judges Brayman and Murphy came crawling back on board. They got quickly tired, as you will, of playing shuffleboard. Someone of your legal acuity should not be collecting annuity. You should be leading the charge with no thought or excuse against Superior Court waste and abuse. Now let's be honest, as we all know, not everyone is so sad to see you go. For the CJA bar who felt your wrath, they're only too happy to show you the path. When you applied technicalities to killers and blithely set them free, they tried to run you out of town then. Yes, your old friends at the FOP. You were the first hippie judge. Surely Weisberg doesn't count. A rock and roll Harley Davidson jurist. Now that will be hard to surmount. A dashing figure you did make with blue jeans and cowboy boots. So what if you didn't always get it right? There are always plenty of hoots. Rehabilitative alimony, you bombastically declared, was just fair and logical. But alas, my old friend, the Court of Appeals called it farcical. As our training leader, you are always wise and intense, unfortunately teaching us to impose probation with an illegal sentence. But let's not dwell too much on the infamous past. Your legacy in the law will surely last. Thus, this terrible decision, and this terrible and hasty decision, must all be for show. We'd have thrown you a party anyway, Truman. You don't really have to go. So friends and colleagues, lend me your voice. We have to dissuade Judge Morrison from his horrendous choice. Let's gather our spirit like we did long ago to chant loud and hard, hell no, Truman don't go! Hell no, Truman don't go! Hell no, Truman don't go! One more time, hell no, Truman don't go! Burgess.
People want to go home and go to bed.
We're just getting started.
Oh, no, 3 more hours.
I have no stories about Truman Morrison in court. I've seen him in court only once. I have no memory of that. I've heard some stories about Truman and know they exist. I should remember them, but I have no memory. I knew this when I took on the task of saying something tonight. Since I know no stories, I've tried to get them from someone else. In this case, I thought Truman himself might be a good source. I knew, as you all probably know, that maybe you don't, that Tim kept meticulous notes of his cases. Of an evening after a day in court, he would go back to his computer and commit his memory to notes. So before she left, I asked his clerk, Jane Underwood, who's over somewhere, to get me a copy of some of his notes. I told her to pick out some just for Andy. She kindly did that, so here's Truman himself talking about some of his cases.
Is there a way we can stop this?
I should add that the names I use are not the real names. I've had to change them for reasons that might become obvious, but you'll understand. These come in different pieces of paper here. I put them together. This first one is United States versus Granch, September 15, 1995. Motion to suppress. Brought by Amy Ameling. She won it. Wonderful lawyer. Should be paid $100 for every second she spends in court. A small price to pay someone trying to keep poor people from being put in a cage for the rest of their lives. I offered her a job as my law clerk when the hearing was over. United States versus Crum, October 15, 1998. Sentencing. Crum defended by another of the Walking Dead, the distinguished Mr. Smarf. He arrived late looked around and announced that he couldn't find his client. Smart, dressed appropriately in an Up Yours t-shirt, woke up from his front row seat and said, "Hey, you're my lawyer." A wonderful start. And by the way, some of this corroborates, oddly and coincidentally, something we've heard from other people here. So I'll just go on. I announced my tentative view about the sentence. I said that I would find no normative principle that would support my putting Smarth in a cage for the next 30 years. True, Smarth had had the temerity of availing himself for the 100th time of someone else's car. True, the loquacious Mrs. Smidgen, the pre-sentence writer, had stated amongst 15 pages of utter gibberish that Smarth had been a plague on the community. But having talked this over with my law clerk and about 15 other judges, I was comfortable. I then heard from Crum, who is a graduate of the University of Somnolence, or is it Indolence? He valiantly fought for Smarth, telling me that Crum was bad, but not all bad, that Crum had forfeited his right to liberty, but that Crum wanted him to tell me that he wanted probation. Skip over one. I thanked Crum for his assistance and had him take his seat. Up rose Matilda Messerschmidt, the Darth Vader of prosecutors. I said, "Messerschmidt, what do you have to say to my tentative view that I should sentence the defendant to 2 to 6, all but 1 year suspended with $300 fine, 100 hours community service?" Messerschmidt barked, "Judge, I would prefer being addressed as Ms. Messerschmidt rather than just Messerschmidt." I found that odd, but granted that request. Messerschmidt said she wanted to file life papers. I asked her what normative principle of American jurisprudence allowed her to do that. Surprisingly, she came up with something that seemed to make sense. So I called Weisberg, who was in the middle of jury instructions. I said I needed 30 seconds of his time if he could take a short break. I told the courtroom that I would take a 20-second recess, and with my law clerk met Weisberg in the hall. I asked him what to do, and he said, "Oh, Tim, you can't do that." I asked him what normative principle of American jurisprudence made him say that. We discussed the matter for 20 minutes, and he convinced me. When I got back to the courtroom, I announced my tentative view that Messerschmidt had needed to file life papers before trial. Crum announces how he didn't think she did, and that in many events he was prepared to waive the point. When I turned to Messerschmidt, she said she wanted to check with her appellate division. At this point, it was 5 o'clock. Just then I got a call from Willie telling me we needed to leave the house by 5 o'clock to get to the rock concert in New York. And Susie called me just after. I said I needed to pick up Willie at 5 o'clock to get to the rock concert in New York. Then I announced my tentative view that we would need a continuance so that Messerschmidt could talk to her appellate division. His lawyer would not agree to that, but Messerschmidt wanted it, so I put the matter over until March 4 at 4:15. I left thinking that I had reached a jurisprudentially sound result. I have one more here that got out of order. I'm sorry. So this is the United States versus Deere. So not too long. June 4th, 1992. Bond interview scheduled for 4 o'clock. We started at 4:30. That's because Deere's lawyer was twiddling his thumbs in the courtroom of the distinguished jurist Milton Mildew. Milton felt it was more important to have Colson, Deere's lawyer, observe him read jury instructions than to allow me the pleasure of Colson's company for 20 seconds. When I had the effrontery to call Milton to politely, even obsequiously, request an estimated time of arrival of Colson, should he be able to find my courtroom, he hung up on me, so I waited. Colson asked why I had summoned him. I reminded Colson that Deere had been locked up for 3 months on an unlawful entry charge. I thought Colson might want Deere's bond review, so I had issued a come-up. Colson stared blankly at me. As always, I announced my tentative view, in this case, that Deere should be put in an outpatient drug treatment program under the supervision of Bill Earhart, Jasper Orphan, Jay Carver, and my wife. No one objected. Afterwards, sent my 100th memo to the chief judge about how we needed to do something about defendants languishing in jail. And that is the end of the notes, everybody. I had some modeling comments I'll omit at this point.
Well, we have celebrated Judge Morrison in song, in verse, and in humorous story. And there comes a time when we must be serious, because we have come here to pay appropriate tribute to this great man. And the best way that I know to pay appropriate tribute to this great man is to share with you some of his pearls of wisdom.
I knew you weren't serious.
Which are indicative of his greatness. Early in his career, I had the occasion to observe that he dressed somewhat oddly. He wore tight jeans and cowboy boots. And so I inquired of him, Tim, why do you dress in this manner? Particularly, why do you wear those cowboy boots? First pearl of wisdom. Early in my career, he said to me, I observed that one of the greatest jurists that ever judged in this town wore cowboy boots. And I wanted to grow up to be just like him. And so I wear cowboy boots just like Charlie Hamilton. I said to Tim,
Not interested.
before you embark upon that track, I suggest that you check with our colleague, Harry Green. Later on, I had occasion to have another conversation with Judge Morrison. He wanted to move from the second floor, where he occupied chambers next to Frank Burgess, to the fifth floor. And I just couldn't imagine why he would want to move from the second floor and give up his chambers next to Judge Burgess and move to the fifth floor. So I questioned him rather closely about this. And after several hours of close cross-examination, he had to admit to me that he wanted to move to the fifth floor to Bruce Bowden's chambers because he wanted to find whatever he took every day to make him act the way he did. I don't know whether he ever found it or not. I doubt that he did. Then later on in his very illustrious career, he indicated a desire to be a member of the Education Committee. And again, I had a long conversation with him. And I asked him, why did he want to do this? And he explained to me that he wanted to do it because he was a pedagogist. And one of the things that he had a great interest in was pedagogy. And he would always look for the pedagogical aspect of whatever issues he might be delving into. And I agree, he is a great pedagogist. Finally, when he got ready to retire, he came to me and had the nerve to negotiate with me his exit. He made certain demands upon me for certain concessions and certain things that he thought were appropriate and fitting with respect to his exit. Most of these things I could agree to quite readily because they were quite reasonable. The last thing he put on the table, and everybody might, all of the judges here might keep this in mind, he wanted me to compensate his disengagement. and I'm still trying to figure that one out. But I think what it means maybe is Tim wanted to take an extended vacation while he was in the process of disengaging himself from his duties and responsibilities with pay as a jurist. But Tim has been an outstanding judge. He has been dedicated to the art of judging in all of its finer aspects. He has always been ready and willing and anxious, except within the last 2 or 3 years, to share his wisdom from a pedagogical point of view with all of his colleagues. So we will indeed, Tim, miss you a great deal, and we hope that we will have the benefit of your services and your presence as a senior judge, not quite as much as we did before, but at least some nonetheless. Thank you and good luck.
When we started, there were people that might want to say something very brief that didn't get a chance. So if anybody has the nerve to come up here and say a few more nasty things, I thought there'd be at least one.
Good evening, everybody. For those who don't know me rather, it's been a long night. My name is Alonzo Wiggins, and I'm the first generation of criminal clerk for Judge Truman Morrison. There are several generations of courtroom clerks who are here representing that august body, who sit every day at his side in the attendance of his duties. I will never forget the prize-winning experience I had when I was assigned to Truman Morrison. We started into a family-run major crimes calendar, which involves homicides and the like. His law clerk at the time is here, and he can verify this as well. We used to butt heads constantly in court about procedural matters. We used to jockey for position because, as you can see, I'm not a small fellow, and neither is he. People used to compare the two of us walking down the back corridor as two bears lumbering down the hall in search of a courtroom and maybe finding it on time. We used to go into court prepared to do battle, prepared to do service, and always, no matter what was going on in court and no matter how we would deal with situations, Truman Morrison always inspired myself and other courtroom clerks to have an appreciation for the law above and beyond the simple fact that we were assisting him in his daily duties. And I just want to say right now, and I know Fred's going to say words about this, Truman, you are truly one of the greatest.
The floor is open. Anybody else? Paige says if they talk more than a minute, I have to grab them. My job is to turn over the mic to Truman, which I will do in a minute. I promised you at the beginning that I would tell you the real reason that Tim has decided to cash out. And unfortunately, you're tired and it's been a long time, and the real reason takes a long time to describe. Let me be as quick as I can. A lot of people have said that what his plan was is to open a BMW dealership in Southern Virginia, Tazewell County, which Tazewell County, I beg your pardon. And he didn't have it figured out. He figured he would live on the family farm, he could sell his house, The kids could go to public school, and with the money they could save from private school tuition and the rent-free, Susie could come up to DC for her job by helicopter. Tim could drive up here for the kids' soccer practice and guitar lessons, and with his dealership, he could get a BMW M6 and make the 6-hour trip in 4.5 hours. The problems were that Susie said absolutely no, obviously, and also his market analysis showed that in 3 counties, Tazewell County, Russell County, and Washington County, there was only one BMW, and that was a 73 2002. Most people assume he was leaving for the money, and that also had a lot of credence, of course. He's almost 60 years old. He's got 2 kids under 10. Actually, they're not under 10, but talking about Morrison, it's fair to use some hyperbole. He's got private school tuitions. He's got college ahead of him. Lord knows they've tapped Susie's parents for everything they could get. They've refinanced 4 times in the last 3 years, and he has absolutely no equity left in his house. The only problem is he doesn't have a job, and he has no real prospects, so that is not the real reason. Some have assumed that after 21 years, it's really nothing more complicated than that he's burned out, and that also has credence. But the reason that can't be the case is that after all this time, he has finally risen to a position of responsibility in the court. After lobbying for 2 or 3 years the chief judge, he finally got his dream assignment, which is a judge without portfolio. He has absolutely no calendar. He's the coordinator of misdemeanors. And that means all he has to do is boss other judges around and take an occasional misdemeanor case.
Isn't that what you're going to do, Fred?
Yeah, that's my next assignment. I managed to work myself in it. So the most strenuous thing he's done in the last 3 months is to try a possession of an open container of alcohol on somebody else's calendar. So he's obviously not burned out. So I'm going to tell you what the real reason is, and it's an emotion as old as time itself. Envy. Most people assume that Tim and I are very close. The truth is, and this will hurt, that he's 3 years older than I am. And all of our careers, which have had some parallel development to them, I've always been ahead of him. And it's driven him absolutely nuts.
Absolutely right.
I came to the Public Defender Service 6 months before he did. I rose to a position of responsibility there when he was still just a trial lawyer. I came on the Superior Court 6 months or 7 months before he did. And I rose to a position of responsibility on the court before he did. Each time I would come up to Tim and say, "This is a nice thing that's happened to me. I'm sorry it didn't happen to you." Doesn't it drive you nuts that I'm 3 years younger than you and I've achieved so much in so little time?
True story.
And he would laugh and say, "Yes, that's true," and he would go back and brood about it and wonder where his failings were. So the real reason he's decided to retire is so he could do something before me. And I wasn't going to do this, but it is, I think it's appropriate, and I feel it in my heart, that it's my turn to be envious of him. Because apart from the fact that he's going into retirement and he'll have more free time than I don't know another person that I've ever met that could fill this room on a Thursday with about a week's notice with so many people with so much love in their heart. And that's really his success, I think, as a jurist and as a person. So,
I'd hoped the room would have thinned out a little bit. It's amazing, it hasn't. I need to use some notes here. I'm do well at public speaking only when I completely control the room, which I do every day, but I clearly don't control this room. I hope all my colleagues, by the way, this won't be long, have taken note of my new suit. I'm not big on formal attire, and
Hold the microphone to your mouth.
I can't take notes. I can't do it at the same time. I actually never owned a suit since 1982 until about 3 weeks ago when I thought I had a job prospect and I bought the suit. I walked into the judge's dining room the day after I bought the suit, wearing the suit, and somebody said very loudly, "Oh, his khakis must be in the cleaner." So this party gives me the occasion to wear this suit, which cost a lot of money, and otherwise it would have been the Safeway on Saturday in my suit. Despite mounting evidence to the contrary, I continue to think of myself as a young person. And the realization that I'm speaking at a retirement party and that it's my retirement party is something I find difficult to accept. I have a great deal to be thankful for tonight. The job that I'm retiring from, I'll try to do this in 6 or 7 minutes, you all have endured a lot, has been a truly wonderful and unique experience. I remember going out to lunch with Judge Bob Moran, who I hope is still here, about 6 months after he came on the court, and I asked him, I said, "Bob, how do you like being a judge after 6 months?" I hope he doesn't mind me quoting his response. If he does, it doesn't matter, I'll do it anyway. He said, "Are you kidding? Being a judge is such a privilege. I feel so lucky to have the opportunity to do this work." And that is exactly how I have felt about being a Superior Court judge. It is such a great unearned privilege that I have had the opportunity to do for 20 short years. And amazingly enough, although some members of the bar I'm sure would not believe this, I as I'm leaving this job, still have difficulty in some ways accepting that I haven't. And when I'm away from this job, when I go on vacation for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I come back to the courthouse, and I get ready to go to court, and I put on my robe, which, by the way, I've only had one robe in 20 years, the one the Public Defender Service gave me on a boat in 1979. I don't want to stand too close to this robe. I put on my robe, and I walk down to my courtroom, and I knock on the door, and I step up onto the bench, and everybody rises, and the room falls silent, and I swear I say to myself, "Damn, man, I'm a Superior Court judge. Isn't this amazing?" And that's a true story. I honestly do that. Although I've always thought it essential to appreciate and remain in awe of all the power that I possess in my office, a part of me has never really accepted that it could happen, that I would be given all of this power and responsibility. And it certainly doesn't seem like 20 years ago. I remember vividly when I first, I'm going to tell one story. When I first came on the bench, I was Chief Judge Moultrie because he had heard of my scholarship in the area of domestic relations law and my general enthusiasm for civil procedure coming from the public defender. He appointed me to the Domestic Relations Motions Court, which was a place in 1979 where every single thing that had to do with domestic relations, except the trial of the case, went. And you'd walk into this room, and every seat would be taken, and the aisles would be filled with sort of surly, angry people who were standing there. And my first law clerk, who's standing right over there, Greg Linson, and we would stay up until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning trying to make some sense out of this bewildering array of motions that we had to deal with the next day. And then the next morning, we would walk down to court, and I would always insist on stopping in the robing room just outside the courtroom, which is because I was so filled with terror at the notion that I had to go into this room. And Greg would say things like, "Oh, Judge, you've got to go in sometime. might as well do it now. Get it over with." And he would gradually walk me toward the door. And like a bad childhood memory, I remember so vividly the sound when I walked into that standing room only courtroom in domestic relations in 1979. In the Superior Court, as in movie theaters, they have these seat bottoms that are sort of spring-loaded, and when you want to sit down, you sort of pull the seat down and you sit on it, and then when you get up, the seat bottom comes up. And I remember to this night the sound when I would walk in the room, my heart beating 1,000 beats a minute, and all these seat bottoms would come up at once. As everybody rose, it sounded like 1,000 turkeys taking flight. Oh, such a horrible memory. And I would then sit down with a big black magic marker, and I would just figure out as best I could how to make these 32 matters go away. Continue them, deny this, grant this. And I would check off each one like enemy killed until I got to the bottom and I could return to my chambers again. Let me skip over some things in light of the hour. Unlike many jobs, most of the things that I do every day as a Superior Court judge never get old or commonplace. And I'll just give a few examples of this. I could give a very long list. This is why I love this job so much. How could you ever get used to the excitement that I sincerely still feel? My fellow judges will appreciate that. So will lawyers. Everybody will appreciate this, I hope. When the jury files in, I don't care whether it's a car crash case or a murder case, when the jury files into the room, it's silence, everybody's standing there, and the foreperson is about to announce the verdict. And my heart starts beating fast at that moment, to this day, after hundreds of jury trials. And how could the challenge of responsibly dealing with the immense power that I have over people's liberty in the exercise of my sentencing discretion ever grow old? It never does. And I'm continually struck by how odd it is that I make hundreds of important and sometimes difficult decisions every week, and I have no system, I share this with every judge, no system of feedback or accountability or criticism on how I'm doing. And as much as the first day, my challenge is to avoid in such an atmosphere gradually becoming convinced of my own wisdom, not listening to other people who have different ideas. And I every day struggle, as good judges do, to avoid every judge's peril, which is to say, I must be doing things right, because after all, when's the last time somebody told me I wasn't? I could go on all night about the things that make being a Superior Court judge, I think, the most interesting job in the world, but I know at this point you wish very much that I wouldn't, and I won't. I really still have not grasped, I don't think, the fact that I am tomorrow going to go to my courtroom, and that will be the last time for a while. that I will be in the courtrooms where I have made my life for the past 30 years, actually. I pray that I can find another calling that will give me half the intellectual stimulation, excitement, and fun that being a Superior Court judge has given me. I will stop now after I thank a few people. I want to first thank the people who have been forced to work with me as my secretaries. Eileen Petrone, I don't know whether she's still here or not, who worked with me for a little while. Good. She worked with me for a little while and escaped with her mental health largely intact. And for those of you that work at the courthouse, you know what an easy transition she had, because she came to me to work in my chambers after a career of working with the one person that I was most often mistaken for by way of personal habits and style, Frederick B. Bean, clerk in Florida. Somehow she survived that transition. And Savitria Melton, who I know just left, who is in the process of helping me find the door after 20 years of devil may care chambers organization. And then, of course, my longtime walk buddy and sparring partner and girlfriend, Lorraine Hamilton, better not have left
You
here.
have to leave.
No! I can't believe it. Secretary Emeritus, my secretary for 25 years. During each day of those 25 years before we had to part for financial reasons a few months ago, we could be heard in our building 5 chambers away, screaming at each other, yelling, and laughing with each other. And I want to thank the wonderful, wonderful group of intelligent, patient young people who have served as my law clerks. We thank God many of them are here tonight. Young people brave enough to risk their first year out of law school with an unorthodox city jurist in a city court, passing up in the process dignified, normal clerkships. You all have meant so much to me. You have challenged me to do what was just. You've taught me the law. You've tried hard to keep me honest and truly shouldered with me all the tensions and terrors and burdens and rewards of being a Superior Court judge. And I can never express adequately my gratitude to all of you. And to the extent that from time to time I've done the job at all well, it's due to your sharing the job with me every day. And my courtroom clerks, happily many of them are here today, who were willing to be publicly associated with me and to put up with my idiosyncrasies. And my wonderful sons, this is sounding a little like the Academy Awards, it'll be over in just a moment. And my wonderful sons, Truman and Willie, put up with so many nights when first I would arrive home, then when Susie got her job, Mom and Dad would arrive home at 8:30, and Willie and Truman have often reminded us that normal American families don't begin dinner at 9:15 on Tuesdays. And I, of course, owe a debt that I can never repay to my wonderful partner for 20 years, Susie Schaefer, whose patient understanding of all of my weirdness and rages and unusual disposition continues to this day. Being a judge takes a toll on people's families, and nobody could ask for a better family. And I want to thank all of the people who have worked so hard to put this wonderful, wonderful party together. I, of course, fought the idea of this party with appropriate notions of modesty and pretended that I was opposed to the entire endeavor. And I'm, of course, thrilled by it, as anybody would be. And a lot of very busy people with no time in their lives to devote to this have put this all together. Most of all, Paige Kennedy, wherever she is, right there. And Judge Russ Cannon, wherever he may be. And I'm just learning tonight of all the other people who have contributed so much to make this all happen tonight. I have been very blessed. I thank you all for taking the time out of your busy lives to come down here on a Thursday night and share this moment with me. Nobody could ask for more than I have received in my life, including such a wonderful, wonderful group of colleagues and friends and family. Thank you very much.